And what did you say it's called?
Acroyoga. There's the acrobatic version of it, which gets a little more interesting to look at. And you can be having someone balancing their hands on your hands, their hands on your feet, their feet on your hands. So you could go through flips and spins and all sorts of like really ridiculous looking things.
How did you feel when he was doing it to you?
It felt amazing.
It's a little weird to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we do. There's a YouTube video.
Yeah,
it's not out.
Oh, not out yet. Tune in.
There's a guy called Jason Niemer, who he's the co-founder of Acroyoga. He's been a friend. And so I started it like 12 years ago. But it's an amazing practice to integrate with any kind of manual therapy because you're using gravity to decompress the spine. And also when you're upside down, you don't really know how to respond the way that you would. All right, so what you're gonna do, you're gonna stand in front of me. Your legs are gonna straddle out wide. First, I'm gonna put my feet into your hips and we're gonna dip you onto my feet, fall onto my feet.
Okay.
Yep, ground just like that, perfect, good. Let your body kick. Yeah, you're good. Don't mind if I get a mild erection during this?
Yep.
Mr. Burgundy, you have a massive erection.
So it kind of forces you to either surrender or just stay contracted. But if you're willing to surrender, the nervous system's able to like lengthen and open in a way that if we were just working and you're laying down, you're like, that's an orientation you're used to. Along with that, it's starting to leverage gravity to work with the body as opposed to like, you know, me muscling into you.
Right. So how does the hip feel right now, actually?
It feels a little more open, a little bit more free.
What are actions that are challenging? You said internal rotation is tough?
Yeah, internal rotation. If I rotate a lot this way, I can feel the hip being kind of stiff.
How do you just lay down on your back? So I find using an elbow can kind of like take broad pressure like this. So you're using your breath as the main tool. Marks, connective tissue or nervous system. It almost feels like it's shifting down a gear. And that's the difference between a lot of massage. Effleurage is the term for like these like sweeping motions and whatnot, compared to with an approach like this. I'm finding a point of tension. I'm respectfully nudging into it.
It's painful and uncomfortable, but it's probably like a 5 or 6.
Great. And my preference, which different people have different pain scales, my preference is to live around like a 7, like 6 or 7. So I'm right at the edge of, hey bro, did you notice this? And hey, do you want to explore this? If you do, breathe into it. If not, you know, you don't need to.
What I've noticed from a practitioner is that it seems to have over the years been the most beneficial, that kind of like the longer within reason that we can kind of work on a spot, the better. You know, getting in there at like a 5 to 7 range allows some communication. It has given me trust, right? Like this is an area that's hurt for 12 years. And now all of a sudden, you know, I do know Aaron previously, but we don't like know each other. Yeah, it's a big deal. I like to use this body every day. And so the second that I recognize, oh shit, okay, he knows what he's doing. He's not trying to kill me. And it gets to be easier and easier.
You could have that same lens when working with yourself, slowly easing into it and breathing into it. Stop and notice, okay, do you notice your shoulders are starting to creep up? Do you notice you're starting to clench your fists a little bit? Do you notice your breath is starting to move up into your clavicles, up in your shoulders? It's like, okay, like my nervous system is upregulating. So now we're gonna go and do some PNF. I know what you know what that is. Obviously, like this is contract, relax, start to engage the nervous system. So start to press this pelvis, this ilium up into my hands, almost like you're bringing your pelvis that way. So press up towards the ceiling into my hand. Yes, that. Hold that for about 5 seconds. Start creating a little rotation through the pelvis and then relax and exhalation. We're gonna start to go a little deeper into this motion and now press this pelvis up into my hand again. Good, good, good. Hold that for 3, 2, 1, and then relax, exhale. Damn, like that's cool.
Locomotion.
So then from here, it's like, okay, what do we do with this? Saying, okay, if we just had an intervention here, that's not gonna be enough. It's just gonna go back, you know? So then it's saying, okay, what's the relationship of this to, you know, the leg and the ankle and the foot and all of the things?
My legs,
It's like levity.
the muscles are just, yeah, kind of
It's like, oh, now it's like, you can feel like the sacroiliac and all that stuff. It just feels more spacious. It's going to be more effective to work in between muscle bellies. So getting into the muscular septa, you could call it. So we're going through here and we're creating this like shearing force, just kind of like this subtle little stretching force. So we could pull superficially and be more like superficial fascia and adipose and all that stuff, or you can get into that wrapping around the muscle bellies. So like the epimysium and whatnot. So that what we want is we want all of your muscle bellies and the bellies within the bellies within the bellies all the way down to be able to slide with each other. Once they start to like dehydrate and bind together, now you have a chunked segment of movement as opposed to that spiral that is walking and running and punching and kicking. It becomes like robot stiffness,
Right.
which is inflammation, which is pain, which is not being able to dance, not being able to play with your kids. You start kind of like, until eventually you almost like the body starts to
Cement.
cement together. And so this is a slow, respectful process of going through and just starting to open up some space between those muscle bellies. And what opening up space is, it's not space, it's hydration.
When you have someone working on you, it's like you're getting in trouble by like your parents or something, like just stuffing all your clothes underneath your bed or something.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the knee connected and you're going to immediately rotate the femur. Yep. And then come back down. This is called a pin and stretch technique, you could say. I'm pinning the tissue. I'm trying to pulling that tissue away from the top of the ilium, which is the attachment points of all of these muscle groups. And then I'm having you actively move through that range of motion, and we're shearing that tissue to create some more tissue hydration.
Feel like melted into there, yeah.
So what that melting is, people don't really know exactly. You've heard the term like thixotropy, probably. Gels can turn into liquids. The suggestion is whether it's because the connective tissue is like a liquid crystal. So as you're pushing weight pressure into that tissue, it sends a charge into the tissue and changes the composition. There's a suggestion that it's like the mechanoreceptors. Or,
Might be just like the brain.
yeah.
The brain saying, it's okay over there.
Yeah, your brain saying like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
I'm going to start to come through from here and actually start to bring my awareness into that place. And now you're shining a flashlight on it. And now we're able to kind of start to bring it back on. Same thing, bring that femur into internal rotation. Good. You see you have more internal rotation. It's pretty cool. Another interesting thing with working with connective tissue or fascia, which ultimately you're never just working with tissue, you're always working with everything. But working with connective tissue, what I'll do is I'm looking for the direction of where the tissue is stuck. So you'll feel me, I'll go like up, down, left, right, and it feels, you'll kind of find a point where it's like, oh, it doesn't want to go this direction. So that's the direction that I'll kind of start to explore. And so I'm pinning down this tissue, that point of the IT and the lateral quad there, and we're starting to differentiate that connective tissue between the IT band and vastus lateralis. And as I sink into that, you literally turn your connective tissue from a gel to more of a liquid, which allows you to move more fluid. And suddenly you can like, cool, I can get internal rotation. Imagine you're wearing like a pair of pants or like a wetsuit. That wetsuit can get twisted and pulled in different directions. And what we're doing, and you can do this with a resistance band or a foam roller or a ball or just like movement, is we're literally going through and saying, where are the pants too tight or too twisted? And I'm literally just going through and saying, okay, let's like unwrinkle the pants here. Oh, okay, it's tight and dehydrated and kind of torqued there. Okay, let's just unwrinkle the pants there. And you just keep doing that.
Right.
And the body starts to feel more like comfortable, like it fits better. It's super, super simple. You're going to move quite different after this.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Hey.
Aaron came out in 2015 or so and worked on me, did some Rolfing techniques and stuff. And I remember it was really beneficial and really great. And at the time, I don't think anybody really knew who he was. And I think he was just out there trying to make a name for himself. And a couple years later, he has made a name for himself. And it was been pretty cool for me to kind of watch and hear his name get kicked up. And I'm like, is that the weird guy that molested me a couple of years back in my gym? And here he is getting his hands all over me once again.
Yeah, you're going to lay on your side just like that. And you're bringing the band around the ankle like this. One side around the back. And then over, through. So that way you can pull on the band. And now you're going to actually slide yourself away. So you're creating traction on the ankle. We're starting to use this tool to add traction, opening up through this space a little bit. So breathing into this area. As it feels appropriate, you can play with elevating the hip, raise the hip up towards the ears. So you're trying to go like that, close that space in the side here, contracting QL. And now you're going to try to reach the heel the opposite direction. Good, that's it. And you think if you perpetually have a bound segment in the rib cage that impedes you from being able to have like a low, deep breath, that would send an indication to your nervous system that you're safe, you're calm. You think if you have like an adhesion or something stopping that point, it could kind of stop the nervous system from being able to breathe in the way that it actually feels like it can feel. You follow breath in here. play with reaching the right arm up overhead the best you can. Good. Again, following that breath. Good. Now you're going to play with alternating like an accordion, reaching the leg away, reaching the shoulder away, opening this whole side body, and then shrinking it together. Find the big toe in contact with the ground. Each step you're taking, you're allowing a little bit of that like corkscrew motion. Boom, 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 allowing a little bit more extension in the hip. So every time you're taking a step, that right hip is going back, and that left shoulder is coming back, and it's springing you back into position. So just kind of feeling the body, like the levity of that rotational pattern.
I feel more length in my, like my side, this whole side.
Yeah.
Feels like it's got like more length.
Yeah.
I feel like it really opened up a lot. I feel really good. This whole side just feels a little different than this side.
Should we do a little bit on the left side and then, yeah, whatever we had. Getting you up from that after doing all of that on the right and then nothing, like not on the left, like you would feel weird.
Yeah.
Start to just observe that sensation of the big toe making contact with the ground and kind of allow that big toe to kind of be like the last thing. The end of the step, you're kind of driving off, poof, 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 and just allowing that hip to start to open up. As we're working through the shoulder, we're thinking about not just the joint itself, but we're thinking of the relationship of the lats and the anterior serratus and biceps and triceps and all the muscle in the forearm, wrist. If there's tension in anywhere in this chain, it's going to manifest itself up into the shoulder as well. So as we're going through, we're not just working on the one problem point, but kind of just like more the upstream, downstream, midstream, instream, outstream. Wiggle through the fingers a little bit if you feel like it. Yeah. So attachments are great because that's where the highest, again, concentration of particular mechanical receptor called the Golgi tendon organ, which responds pretty well to pressure like this. Yeah, so think if you were trying to whip water off of a rag, you'd probably go like that through the whole thing. So if there's some stuff here and we don't address the whole rag, it's just gonna come back. Or we're not going to get the range that we're actually looking for. So we're thinking, how do we address this from the torso out through into the fingertips? And as we start to get that whole system to start to soften, also what we're thinking about is like the global function of your nervous system. So if there's tension in the body, that's going to send some level of a ripple of tension in the nervous system as a whole, because the nervous system's holding that tension there. Wiggle through the fingers. So as we're going through it, just finding little places of like, where do we have like kind of like dents in the nervous system, you could say. And if I like, oh, okay, cool, there's some stuff in the forearm. Oh, there's some stuff in the diaphragm. Oh, a little bit in the jaw. So they call that parasitic tension. So it's tension that literally you're expending energy throughout your day to maintain, and you just don't realize that you're maintaining it. And so we're going through, we're just saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And so as I'm going through these tissue layers, most of the flexors in the forearm are going, elbow to wrist. So they're like vertical like that. So my pressure is going down along those tissues to separate those muscle bellies. This is softer than it was a second ago. You notice that all? It's okay.
Yep.
So it's juicier. Juicy is like that suppleness is health. Hold this in this hand and just do kind of little like rotations, just kind of decongesting that joint a little bit. Gorgeous, really nice. Yep. Yeah, so you're using that band to distract the joint. So you're doing kind of like your own little like myofascial release in here because the band's doing that pin and stretch action, while you're also kind of tractioning, creating some space around the joint at the same time, and allow the joint just to like relax completely. So you're not really muscling it, you're more just like allowing it to swing. Yeah. And then drop this, and then start playing with going into this overhead motion with the hand with the thumb facing up. Yep, good. And then coming back into medial rotation with the shoulder. Yep, good. And then coming up, thumb facing up. Nice. And try to keep the traps as minimally engaged as possible. So you could even bring the band over more directly onto the trap. So now we're using that as a feedback. Say, cool, like don't lift the scapula with the trap as you're going through this motion. Good. Does that feel kind of good?
It feels really good, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You could also play with turning the head away right? So now you're getting into all this neck connective tissue, scalenes and platysma and SCM and all the things, breathing into this area, just creating more spaciousness in this shoulder girdle. Great. And you can come out of that whenever you feel like it or keep going or whatever, but just, this is a nice little like takeaway. Kind of keep working with it kind of thing. Then you gotta work on hip extension with the opposite leg, so kind of driving that guy back as much as feels comfortable and just going into like as deep a lunge as feels manageable, oscillating in and out, going forward in the sagittal plane and transitioning over into rotation. Kind of sink into it and emphasize this rotation going this direction. You can even use this hand to drive almost like a goblet squat kind of scenario, and so you're kind of dropping yourself into this.
Oh, I see.
So this would be an amazing practice to do before running or after.
So why do you think this works pretty good as like a stretch for me if internal rotation is where this leg is stuck, but this feels really good and this is external, right?
Because there's also tension in around your adductors and your hip flexors, and for you to be able to go into hip extension, you need to have length through the adductors and through the hip flexors.
I am lacking some internal rotation. This guy froze up and said didn't want to let go of the knee anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's both ranges that you could use more of.
Right.
Essentially.
And it's going to just make the whole thing feel free.
Yeah, so I'd be working through like you're doing of all the muscles like piriformis and all the stuff around there that allow the hip to go into internal rotation, and then also be going into the tissue, because it's not just because a tissue is not allowing you to go into a range doesn't mean the opposite. Both sides have their full range. You could just be bound into one particular range. Mm-hmm. You know, so both ranges are going to be supportive for you. But for you to be able to get that full hip extension, you're going to need to have length to the adductors. You're going to need to have length to the hip flexors.
Yeah.
And they're all connected together. We're specifically addressing the attachment points of those adductors, while we're also opening up through the hip flexors and, you know, all the way across the chain. In short, like, you need to do both.
Did you used to feel broken and busted up, or non-athletic, or like, what's your background?
My background originally became obsession with bodybuilding because I felt like just like awkward in general. Started off as an athlete in the form of ice hockey. Got significantly worse at ice hockey the bigger and bulkier and more jacked I got. That turned into tons of shoulder dislocations, like 50 plus shoulder dislocations.
Wow.
Chronic back pain, just generally, I moved like a machine. Mm-hmm. And very just like disorganized. Like my muscles were disorganized. And then that turned into studying rolfing and various different forms of manual therapy and getting more into different like movement modalities. And I'm now presently still putting the pieces back together and still dealing with the consequences of like a lifetime of imbalance. I still have a lot of stuff I'm working on. And through my process of learning to work with my stuff, I can start to contribute to other people like, I see that in you because I've experienced it in me.
I don't think it'll ever stop. I think it's, continuous. I think being in shape is a full-time job. And B, trying to figure out ways to be pain-free and have really good movement is maybe even a fuller-time job. But you can microdose them throughout the whole day, right? Like you and I were talking earlier, we were getting reacquainted, and you were stretching the whole time. There's ways that you're stretching right now, or moving right now, right? Yeah. There's ways you can move all the time, right? You can do it. I'm sure when you're waiting for coffee, if you can get coffee, like at a coffee shop, you're probably kind of sitting there moving around.
And when you think, so the issue where this kind of gets into like Katie Bowman type perspectives / lots of other people, but she popularized the idea of us outsourcing the movement that would have happened for us to be able to actually create that coffee. Like so much movement energy went into gathering those beans and farming them and shipping them and lifting the bags and creating the machine to create the device for your fat ass to stand in front of the device and look in your phone.
Like, I didn't order it this way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, in order for you
to get too much cream.
Yeah, in order for you to get that coffee, like, work needs to happen. And so now we're in a place where the work is happening, it's just not with you. The opportunity for us to do is say, oh, cool, like, I'm probably not going to become a coffee farmer, but while I'm waiting for the coffee, I could like stretch my hips.
The coffee place I go to, Phil's, it takes a little while to get the coffee. So punch it in on the app, and I'm like, this is great. Takes like 8 minutes, gives me a good walk.
And then the other thing, what would happen if you were eating or living in any ancestral situation, you would be outside to gather those crops. You would be exposing your skin and your eyes to sunlight and varied temperatures. You would get cold, you would get hot. There'd be varied contours of the ground. It's very simple and very straightforward. We live in a world where we're able to outsource all that to someone else. If we want to be healthy, I believe we need to elect to integrate some of those aspects into our daily life, which could be literally as simple as like get your coffee and go for a walk outside and look up into the trees and look up into the clouds. Get that sunlight on your skin and in your eyes and get that motion for digestion, does all the things. It's very simple.
But I saw I was in my hot tub 2 nights ago and saw a meteor shower. It was amazing.
When you start to look up,
Yeah.
you know?
It's great to just experience stuff a little bit, I guess, wider-eyed, you know, and with a good perspective, or at least a rather open perspective.
Yeah. And then also doing things like looking up is actually helpful with energy. It stimulates your nervous system to look up. It's also supportive for creativity. That's why if someone's lying to you, they're probably going to say like, oh, I was out with that, you know, person at 6 o'clock. Like, because they're literally ideating.
Yeah.
They're using their visual system to engage their brain in a way that's creative.
Right.
When you go down, you're engaging your neurology to say, it's time to rest. If you're down in here, like this is, I'm falling asleep position. I'm like, man, I need some coffee. Coffee. And they're like, okay, cool. Oh, now I'm anxious. Right? Yeah. So it's like, oh, like what if, okay, this feels kind of good. Well,
Release trolls your all the time. Thank you so much for today. Where can people find you so they can follow along with some of the stuff you're doing in your podcast?
Yeah, everything's Align Podcast. So if this is YouTube, there's the Align Podcast YouTube page. There's the Instagram page, and there's the book, The Align Method, which we go into all of this stuff and a lot of like the conversations around ancestral health in quotations, just simple practice people can integrate in their daily life. And then the podcast also is called Align Podcast, which we've had this guy, the
Many years ago.
King of Sacramento, on the podcast many years ago.
That's all the time we got. We're out of here. Strength is never weak. This week is never strength. Catch you guys later.